Who is driving car? Bear is driving car. Okay. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, folks, or whatever time the sun hits you. Welcome to Karate Without Belts. I'm John, as always, until otherwise someone slays me and takes my position. Join with me today is a good friend, mentor, and teacher of mine, Jeremy. Jeremy, welcome to Karate Without Belts.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So.
Yeah. Me and Jeremy met something like, I want to say, about 10, 12 years ago.
12 years ago, yeah.
And you were teaching a kata that wasn't getting taught a lot, and I wanted to jump on that really quickly, and I kind of was a little shy about it. And then the next year, I was able to jump on it with you, and then you were like, just learn this one part. I was like, okay. And then the next year, I worked on it with you again, and you were like, all right, you learned the kata. It's great. You want a cookie?
Yeah,
and that just kind of started a friendship that's gone for the last, I want to say 10 years, something like that.
Oh, yeah, it's been about 12 years. Yeah, I've never been known to be very subtle and gentle and foo-fooey. It's usually here, this is the way it is, and that's kind of how it comes out. I don't know if it's good or bad, but...
Well, you were mentioning that in reference to kind of people wanting to learn katas, and you said a teacher of yours before had said something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, probably my first instructor, Robbie Morris, who, I mean, I love that guy to death. I mean, he was like the big brother I never had. And I mean, he watched out for me. I mean, man, you talk about, I mean, it was so tough in that class. It was unbelievable. I mean, you can't do that today. Not in a commercial dojo. I mean, he's running a big dojo. And I mean, you know, one of the better lessons I learned from him was, you know, I was starting to move up the ranks. You know, and everybody wants to get to black belt, you know, whatever. And what was it? I was trying to pick up one kata and stuff, and it was basically the one that he did for demos, which was Kusan-ku. And, you know, and I picked it up very, very quickly because I was constantly watching him do it. And, you know,
that's one of the, at least I think any version of it that's like the most athletic kata you've got, between like jumps and kicks, and like literally you've got to go drop up and then slam down on the ground.
Yeah.
And like that's he must have been very sturdy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, he was. I mean, just extremely flexible. I mean, you know, he was about 6'3", 6'4". I mean, but yeah, I remember doing that, and you know, and he goes, "Okay, it's time for you to learn Kusan-ku," and he goes, "Okay, here's this," and I mean, normally you go through one movement, and stuff. And I mean, I was like on the first day of learning it, I think I went through about 3/4 of the kata. And he gave me that look that he was not happy with me, and I'm like, you know, what's that all about? You know, in the next class, I actually finished. So I learned Kusan-ku technically under instruction in like 2 class periods. But I mean, I'd watched him for months and months and months, you know, watching him do it. And after I learned it, you know, everybody was out of the dojo, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Well, congratulations, you just learned Kusan-ku. That's my kata that I do all my demos on. You want a cookie? Congratulations, get out." You know, I'm just kind of like, you know, I'm just kind of trying to figure out what he was meaning by it. And then, you know, about a week later, he called me in the office, and, you know, and he was like, "You know, I know you're working hard and you're trying to do this and trying to advance." And he got to the point where I was like, "Don't advance so quickly that you miss the lessons that are there and what can be taught to you.
Well,
And
that's. Oh yeah, keep going.
yeah, no, that really drove. That was probably one of the first changing moments in my martial arts career. And at that point, I did start to slow down a little bit after that. I was like, okay, what's really being taught? What? And I started putting on my analysis and engineer background, which that's what I do for a living. I'm an IT engineer. And so it's like, now I'm like, okay, let's look at this. Why is this? Why is that? I'm really dug in deep on it. And so yeah, I can appreciate that. So
I think that's like that gets at the basis of what I think a lot of people aim for, but kind of the hype around training distracts from, where it's we want to like learn as much as we can and do as much as we can, but in doing so you need to actually back up a minute to actually see what you're doing, rather than just keep going.
right.
I think that's and what's interesting about that is that you, despite only having learned it in 2 class periods, you had a bunch of gray matter with that kata by just watching it.
Oh yeah. And I really think, today I'm not as flexible as I was back then, 28, 29 years ago.
Right.
I was, I had a heck of a vertical jump. I could do a lot of things. I think he really wanted to spend time with me on that kata and really learn it. And, part of me is like, what did I really, I go back and look at it, it's like, what did I really miss out on? But, it's one of those lessons, but what did I also gain? Because I think from that, I really drove in on probably guiding principle number 8, not just in martial arts, but in life in general. Because, in the past, so Kyle stayed for 3 years, master of plan, like research effective 1 time for 10 years or more. It's like, take your time. Look at the journey. Don't be in such a rush.
Right, and I think that's where we get into this like issue of kata, like over kata absorption. I know I was guilty of that at one point, where I was just trying to absorb every kata on the page of a syllabus in like.
Congratulations. Everybody goes through it. I went through it. Trust me, I went through it.
Yeah.
Mine was a little bit different, but yeah, I went through that phase too.
Yeah, and I think it gets kind of into the topic that we were kind of kicking around today, is that like there's kata and there's the kind of memory of kata, and like how we keep what's the purpose of kata, right? Because essentially, like, boxing doesn't have kata, Muay Thai doesn't have kata, Jiu-Jitsu largely doesn't really have kata. It's only the like striking arts like kung fu, karate, and like some of the like Korean variant and that like taekwondo and stuff, and some of like the weapons forms and stuff like that, and other old stuff that has this idea of doing what many perceive as a dance.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of ways, to a lot of people, if that's all they do, that's all it is.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, all good.
Well, I think one of the big problems, and I think, I don't know if people are afraid to call it out like this or not, but this is my take on it. You got a lot of instructors out there just basically saying kata is just an exercise.
Right.
And I think, if you continue to teach that way and you continue to teach your students that way, you're teaching kata as if it's a checklist. You're not teaching it as an analytical tool
Right.
of how things are supposed to be done. And I think that, I think that's one of the big things that's going away is people don't know how to truly teach it. And it's like, well, it goes back to the study. I can't remember what college it was, but the 5 monkeys in the box with the bunch of bananas. You know what I'm talking about?
You may have to explain that one to me.
Well, what it is they put 5 monkeys in this box or in a cage.
Right.
And what they did is they put these stairs up, and they've got a bunch of bananas hanging from there. And so whenever a monkey goes up the stairs to go get it, they get hit with, like, I wouldn't say a fire hose, but they get hosed down and they get knocked down off the stairs.
Oh.
And it would continue to go. And then they remove one monkey, and then it wouldn't even be they get hosed, but then the monkeys would just start pounding anybody who tried to go after the bananas. And nobody remembers the whole reason behind why you're not supposed to go after bananas.
Right,
and
right. It's like Skinner box effect.
Huh?
It's this another kind of version of that is like the Skinner box effect.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But, I think it's being taught as an exercise, and people are just getting away from, hey, this is just an exercise. Well, and that's where you got your jiu-jitsus, MMAs, Muay Thai, all these other, you don't need kata, and in some ways they're right. I agree. In some ways they're right if you're not being taught this. But it's also a different usage of it, and I don't think that's being taught either. So you're not blaming it. I mean, just you know what I'm talking about with some instructors who just don't. That's what they don't know. I don't think so.
Well, it's kind of how it's passed on, right? Like, I think there's this funny clip that I found. I'll share it with you if I can find it again. But it was like, it looked like legitimately some gangster, like it was some gangster movie,
Mm-hmm.
and they just stepped into a karate instructional video,
Mm-hmm.
and like was literally from like the 1950s. And it was just like they just stepped in. They just accidentally. It was like 2 guys from like the mob accidentally stepping onto a set of like a karate instruction video, and like they're explaining, oh, like this is a kata. This is the secret techniques are hidden within the kata. Oh, these men are now doing randori, which is sparring exercise, but they're not really trying to hit each other. Oh, and then afterwards, after we get into our black belts, we have finally attained mastery. Is something I want to do a little more of an examination on later, but it's kind of like that's everyone's idea of not just karate but also what kata is, where it's like, oh, all these moves, maybe they're just an exercise, but they mean something, but then they don't even get practiced.
Right.
So the practice is just the kata.
Right. Right. And that gets into one of these. One of the lessons I'll never forget that I taught at one of our former organization's headquarters. I'll never forget this. The head of the organization comes out and says, Jeremy, go run them through Nahachi Shodan and Yan Sandan. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm going to run them through it, but we're going to do it. And so we get up there, and it was really interesting because the lesson that I was teaching, I don't think they got, and the lesson I got out of it, I got out of when I was driving back home. I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, it was like a light bulb effect. And I don't think I've told you this whole story. You might have heard a little bit about it. But so we're up there doing, starting out Nahachi Shodan.
Right.
And, there's like 12 black belts in there. And most of them were getting ready to test at the next testing, and you're like, all right. And I'm like, man, something's off. We're going to do this again. We're going to do this again. We're going to do this again. And so about 45 minutes later, we're still doing Nazi Showdown. We haven't even moved on to Need-On or Sondon.
Right.
And what it was funny because I knew something was wrong with it, but I couldn't put my hand on it. And the funny thing is, there was one yellow belt in this group who showed up early. He just wanted to do Nazi Showdown. I'm like, cool. He was the only one who was actually doing it right in my eyes.
Right, and that's the first kata you're supposed, in at least where we practice, you're supposed to learn. Some other styles it's later on, but...
Right. But what I figured out, it was literally by the time I got in the car, and I'm like, and I finally figured out what was wrong with it. It was like, so-and-so was thinking about Joe instead of Nazi Showdown. So-and-so was thinking about doing Cheesy Kumbo instead of Nazi Showdown. This person was thinking about Nintendo, Kusan-ku, this, A-ku, everybody was thinking about something other than what was in front of them.
Right.
And I think that, going back to Robbie, my first instructor, man, he drilled into me. It's like, if you don't take care of what is right there in front of you, how are you expect to take care of yourself?
That's a huge lesson.
Oh, you don't think about it, and then it brought me back to, all the Mr. Oyata seminars where it's like, you're going on to show for 3-4 hours before you do anything. And I finally got it, and it's like, oh, he was looking at us dumb goombas, and we're thinking about doing Nintendo and Joe and this and that and the other thing. He's trying to get us focused in on what he's really wanting to teach. And I'm like, duh, why didn't I pick up on that, over the years? And I didn't, but I did at that point. So it was very interesting, that little, I don't know, light bulb for me, but I guess I probably didn't share that with everybody else, but it was interesting. So,
well, and I think that's because then that detracts that. What is the best way to say this? Where it's like, you've got the competence, and the cup can only take so much water. So that, like, people's memories can only take so much. And physiologically speaking, we can only do so many motions before, while there's muscle memory, but you can only do so much before you kind of dampen other muscle memory. Like, the example being Nahachi Shodan. That one yellow belt, he probably only knew Nahachi Shodan.
Exactly.
But everybody else was, learn probably 15, 18, 19, 20 katas at the point when they got to black belt.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but when it comes down to the thing you first learned, why isn't that the thing you can just blow through?
Well,
and then is it really being practiced? Is that really effective practice? Just doing the kata? Then what's the purpose of doing it then? If the yellow belt's doing it better than the 20 black belts in the room.
When I trained with Mr. Shintaku for just a little bit. Very, very little bit. And probably the one thing I got from him was, it was like, you got to have a present mind, or was it natural mind? I think that's what he called it, natural mind. You have to be in the moment when you're doing all this stuff. If you're thinking about something else, guess what? If something comes to you, you're going to be thinking about something else instead of what you should be thinking about. And I think, especially in today's day and age, I think everybody, me too, guilty about, okay, I'm doing this because I'm running through it. Well, why are we running through it? Why are we not concentrating on basics? Things like that. So, but anyway, so.
Well, and I think that goes to like a large issue with curriculum, right? So if there's 15 katas on the page of a curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
can we really expect people to, I don't know, if we're, say, black belt's a 3-year process, just kind of putting that out there, just,
Yeah.
sake
Yeah.
argument.
Yeah.
Then, like, what's the litmus? Like, then is the first kata you learn supposed to be super easy, so you can get through it really quickly, and the later on katas are supposed to be more complicated? So it's easy to remember these early katas, but we don't really practice them that much because they're so easy. And then we do these later katas, and we do them much more because they're so long and complicated and hard to learn. And then, at the end of the day, we've gotten to through these 15 katas on a page, and we've spent 3 years doing that.
Yeah.
And then you get punched in the face in the parking lot because you weren't you weren't practicing. You were just practicing katas. You weren't actually breaking down what they were doing.
Yeah.
So, I hate to make that kind of glib point, but it's just the case that we have so many people focused on this kata and that kata and this kata and that kata, and then they get excited when they see a technique. It's like, is that really the amount of time? What's the amount of time being spent on it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, what's the dedication? What's really going into it? I mean, you see that. I mean, you see that a lot in different styles of karate and stuff like that. But the same way with taekwondo, karate. Um, you see a lot of that kind of mentality. But, and I understand, the instructor saying, okay, here's the curriculum, and, here, check this off, that's great. Okay, you're ready. And I get it for that reason, but, what lesson is it really driving home with the student? And I think that's one of the things that's really kept in my mind constantly. Is like, whenever I have somebody come in front of me, whenever I'm teaching them, is like, what are you wanting to accomplish? Are you just wanting to accomplish checkboard, or are you wanting to accomplish knowledge? And I that's just kind of where I look at it from.
I think, like, then it gets into, like, can someone actually keep all this in check? Because then you have several people have in the last 5 years. I've talked to people about traditional martial arts and kind of the older generation kind of coming, obviously passing on in the next 10, 15, 20 years and whatnot.
Yeah.
And everyone's so concerned about keeping things preserved, making sure nothing gets lost, all this other stuff. How much is there to preserve? How much was actually meant to be preserved? And is preservation the key? And this goes into memory, because we have these 15, 18, 29, 57 katas.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, like for whoever, wherever. How is this effectively passed down? And then how do we even make sure that this is passed down effectively? Is this the way that it should be passed down? Do people remember it correctly even?
Right.
We've done a kata for a while, and then suddenly we're like, maybe something's not right here.
Oh yeah.
And then,
oh yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I did, one of my other instructors was a guy by the name of Mike Miner. I love that guy to death. I tell you what, he's like everyone's favorite uncle that everybody wants to have. It's just he's just one of the most awesome guys you'll ever run into. It's interesting. When I was training with him before the school closed, one of the things I did, because man, I had so many kata that I'd picked up, especially weapons katas. I filmed everything that I knew to that point, and I still have it. And every once in a while I break that thing out, and it's like, okay, what am I doing wrong? And I have to go back, but I do think it is, using video is definitely a good a good tool to remember stuff by.
Right.
To learn by, I would say that you need another point of reference.
I
Um,
think, and it's strange that we now live in a society where people think that's the way you can do it.
right.
We gotten to the point where, like, not to get away from your point, but it's like, for example, like, and I mentioned this with our last podcast with Mike and Jenna, where it was like where I met Mike was we were doing a kata together at Chuck Harris's place, and instead of getting the whole thing down, we kind of like only had 2 hours to do it, and then everyone busted out their cameras to take a video of it.
Yeah.
Now, what is the thought process behind doing that? Where I see that is like, all right, so we're going to get a video of the kata, right?
Mm-hmm.
When are you going to frame by frame go through it to remember what's going on? And is what you're taking a video of the right way that the person's supposed to do it? And
Yeah.
it's the best version of that at that time?
Right.
Could it be improved? You know what I mean? So,
Right.
like,
Right. And I mean, using kind of an IT term that we use, set a baseline, and that's kind of how I look at videotaping things and stuff. Okay, I'm going to tape this kind of at this time. This is setting the baseline of what's going to happen.
right.
You know, I mean, several of us know that there is the video of Mr. Oyata and several of his senior students doing the 8 basic weapons forms.
Ooh.
Back in what the early 80s, late 70s, something like that.
Yes, the secret tape no one must know about. Oh god, I've got to edit this podcast.
Well, I'm sure lots of people know about it.
Yeah. Now, it's out. It's technically out there, but I guess it's out of print.
I don't know about that. I mean, let's just say I do have a copy of it. So, but
And I have a copy of the copy of the copy that someone gave.
yeah, exactly.
Somehow, I have a copy of the copy of the copy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the same copy we both have.
Yeah, and
now I can parse that. So, guy who trained with you at Mike's place, I went to his place 7 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
I managed to get it on old USB. Most of it has managed to survive 3 laptops.
Yeah.
So
what I've always taken that is the beginning baseline for those 8 kata. Period. No matter what anybody says, that is the baseline that I always use. Here's the start. Now, do I think whenever I start looking at it, do I add some little thing into it, or add like a just anything to possibly enhance some type of technique? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But it goes back to, I think that's key, is to know that whatever you're videotaping is a baseline.
or you're deciding at that point.
Right.
Like, for example, that video was at that point decided that is the baseline.
Right.
At later points, that changed.
Right.
Whether or not how many people agree with that or whatnot, and for reasons for that, are kind of not gonna really get into. But and I think that's important. That shows maturity. I think, and a lot of people don't have that because from not seminar culture, but just how that goes on. Another example is I worked with someone I was at some seminar and we were doing some bow drill, and the guy I actually know, but he literally, every time we stopped to go through a technique, he literally pulled out his phone and recorded everything. And I'm just like, great guy to work with. But at the end of it, I was just like, dude, like, just learn it.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to go back and go through all of this. Or if you do, it's like, you can't just go use that as, is that seminar going to be your baseline?
Yeah.
For the techniques? Which is fine if it is.
Yeah.
But odd recordings, odd cell phone recordings, is that the basis for martial arts?
Right. And it pulls into, one of the things that I got out of, I can't believe it's been 20 years, but it's been about 20 years when I was a part of this other leadership program that was a separate education. I mean, not martial arts related.
Right.
We're in there, and and here's the other thing. I try to tie in a lot of things into my martial arts training, not just martial arts. What about this seminar that I went to? What about this leadership training I went to? What about the board meeting I had earlier today? Things like that. How am I tying that into? But
making it more holistic than scattered, which is, I think, a better way to live your life is try to integrate everything that you've actually learned, rather than, well, this is my life over here and this is my life over there. It's compartmentalized and things don't touch. Some things you need to do that with, but
yeah, I mean, from that seminar, I mean, one point that they, it was a 4-day seminar. I mean, you're in there from 8 a.m. till about 11 p.m. And I mean, you got homework 11 p.m. until 8 a.m. and you got to get it done. I mean, did like 30 minutes kind of stuff. I mean, this is like 2-3 hours worth of homework in between, and you're learning to really function at a high level, with very minimal sleep. But one of the things that they talked about is like, we're in one of the programs and they're like, here's a notebook. You can take notes if you want, but you know what? It's not going to do you a doggone bit of good, because if you're taking notes, if you're trying to record things, guess what? You're not paying attention to what's in front of you.
Right.
And you're going to miss it. It's not going to hit you in the head like it should. It's going to be on a piece of paper, and you're going to try to remember what was said instead of, bam, feel what is there.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, going back to a recording of something and listen and watching the recording of something is not the same as remembering it from kind of and internalizing it in that moment.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, I mean, we can akin this for the kids today. We can akin this to go into a movie theater and watching a movie as opposed to seeing a phone clip on YouTube. Right. It's not the same thing. Right. That's for our younger audience. But it's not going to be an impact, and like that goes in the kata is just the kata is what's the technical word for memory device? Forget what that is, but it's a device to remember and to pass down what's being techniques.
Right. Yeah.
But when it just turns into the dance for techniques rather than this is this kata, these are the techniques broken down from it. This is the kata, and this is how you break them down. It's like the kata is taught, but the knowledge isn't necessarily imparted. And so you get this weird shell of what could be good martial arts. But people just kind of just look at the shell and don't kind of open it up to see the gooey center inside.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. And I mean, and there's a lot of things that you have to deal with. I mean, I look at my time that I wasn't with Mr. Yada for very long. I was with him between 2 and 3 years, and I think it's probably closer to 2 years. I think it's a little over 2 years that I trained with him on a weekly basis. And, yeah, I could have wrote down everything, but I would have missed what he was trying to teach. And some of my favorite memories. I mean, I don't have like the catalogs and volumes of books like some of these guys who are with him for 30, 40 years. I just have maybe a handful of stories, but some of my favorite stories were when we were in Okinawa, and it was funny. I always wake up early. I don't know why. I'm an early bird, but anymore I'm kind of an early bird and a night owl, so I just kind of go.
Take a
But
nap in the middle of the day.
yeah, 15 minutes out work, no big deal. But him and I, we'd wake up early and we'd go across the street from the hotel and go to the restaurant and eat. And we were there, 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. And some of the best times were just sitting down and just talking with him, just chatting with him, different things. And I think it led on to some of the biggest lessons that I got from him. And if I would have been busy recording that, I would have never have experienced it. I would have just recorded it as, oh, that's nice, that's just Jim Dandy, it wouldn't have landed on me, and I wouldn't have learned something from it.
Right, and I mean, how much do we really remember of like any time in our life? And then you got to think, how much is that memory going to be impactful down the road, 2 or 3 years down the road, 3 or 4 years down the road, 5 or 6 years down the road?
Absolutely.
Is that memory going to change? Most likely will. I mean, our bodies change all the time.
Yeah.
A videotape won't change, but that's the thing. It doesn't change. And I know people get in arguments over this stuff all the time, where it's like, oh, his hand was here, and this is the way he did it, and this time, and this way. No, his hand was there, and the blah blah blah. And it's just like, at the end of the day, it don't matter because you have your baseline that you went from.
Well,
you don't need to pull out a video to start arguing with people about what's correct and what's not. And that, to a degree.
Yeah, I've been guilty of doing. I've done that a couple times. I mean, I think going back to that baseline concept,
right?
Like, if something is not sound, something has got a crack in whatever foundation you're trying to build, and it's not there, then yeah, it's time to pull up that baseline. Let's level set and move from here. And that's just kind of the way I look at it. Different people got different ways of looking at it, but I just see that, and I've used that a couple times to where another instructor's forgotten something, and I've literally told them like, no, this isn't right, and they would argue with me, and I would tell them, I'm like, well, I'm not going to do it your way. I'm going to do it my way. And I'm going to bring in the baseline video, and I've done this twice. And I'm going to let you see, and I'm going to show you that you're wrong. And I don't like doing that because, one, that puts that instructor on the spot. But if that instructor is teaching something that's fundamentally not sound, then it needs to be corrected. Sometimes you just got to stand up and just pound it into them,
Right. So, and though, and it really does depend on what it is, right? Like, if you've got, I know we're not gonna really talk about specifics. I know exactly what you're talking about, though. And then it gets into like you have to make your own your own decisions ultimately. Right. And this goes into it's your karate. A lot of times, there's always this call for unity in karate. I get that.
Right.
I get. What is it? It was like a year or two ago. They had a big tournament in Okinawa, and suddenly people were getting all riled up over, what do you mean I need to do this tournament version of this kata. Well, okay, seeing it from the tournament runner's perspective, if everyone is doing a different version of a certain kata, it's kind of impossible to really judge on that. I understand from that perspective.
Right.
So if you want to participate in something like that, you know, you want to go to their tournament, you have to play by their rules.
Yeah.
If you learn and do a quality kata that they've already set out, or it's something that you already know, or something that you want to take a challenge to actually, get down, that's great.
Right.
But outside of that, everyone's going to make their own choice. Everyone's going to kind of go with what works for them.
Right.
And I think that's fine. And I think that creates martial arts rather than just preserving martial arts as a whole.
And I mean, you bring up a topic that's probably on the heart of probably the greatest lesson I learned from Mr. Oyata. And that was, I mean, if you don't mind, I'll tell a story about it, if that's
Sure.
cool. I'll never forget, it was probably about 2-3 weeks after we got back from Okinawa. It's late February, early March, and normally we always train in the gym at this church. And for some reason, we were in the cafeteria. I mean, it's cold as all get out, but it was like, all right, we're training here, do this. And one of the things I learned being around Mr. Oyata was there were certain things he would do to see if you were paying attention. And he'd get up there, and one of the things he'd like to do was he'd get up there and say, "You people cannot do my technique. You people know like me." Something like that. It'd be along that lines. And a lot of people just kind of, nod their head and blah, blah. But after spending that time in Okinawa with him, I'll never forget this. He started in on this, and we're finishing up class, and we're getting dressed. And he started in on this. And I remember this because I was getting ready to pull up my pants. When he said that, I dropped my pants and I looked just dead bang at him. Just like nothing else mattered in the entire world. And very quietly he says, "You people don't do my technique. You cannot do my technique." And then even quieter he says, "And I can't do yours either." And it was like, and he knew I got it because I probably had that, Goofy from Disney, the jaw just completely dropped to the floor. I totally got what he was saying. And what was funny is about 3 or 4 years ago, I ran into one of the other guys who was in that class. And I was talking about this story, and he goes, "Yeah, I remember that night. We were in the cafeteria. It was cold as all getting. He was playing back. He was, he literally slapped his head, and he was like, 'Why did I not pick up on this?'" But this gets right to the heart of what we're talking about with videos and things like that. If I would have video recorded that, do you think that would have meant even a hill of beans to me?
No.
Probably not.
Well, it wouldn't have hit you in the same way because what's your focus?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and you know what? From that day on, I became probably a better analyst of what's going on with my kata training and how I do things and stuff like that. Not only there, but also in engineering and how I lead things and how I volunteer in different areas and how I help people out and stuff like that. It totally changed the way I look at stuff. And so, I mean, just that one statement, because I chose, if you think about it, I chose not to put my pants on. I wanted to get a lesson out of the deal. It was like, and I'm very thankful for that one lesson. It probably made a huge difference in my life,
I mean, like, if we all put our pants on, then maybe we'll all actually be able to understand each other.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I mean, that's... And especially in this time now, like, with literally everyone's attentions getting pulled from everything else. Like, we don't... when I was teaching... when I was still in the States teaching at a college... I think we were talking around that time, but we had this problem with kids and their cell phones in the class, and we were suspecting people were cheating.
Yeah.
So when I started up the term, I pulled out a box, like a milk crate,
Mm-hmm.
and these are all international students. So they're all students from all over the place. Everyone kind of had this, spoke the same language of iPhone, in a weird way.
Yeah.
And I said, and I'm like, this was last year, so 2018. So I opened the class with this. I don't slam it, but I firmly place the box at the front of the class, or place the crate in front of the class, and I said, for me, it's 2018. For you guys, it is 1998. Put your cell phones in this box. I am not touching them. You are not touching anybody else's cell phones. You will get your own. You can grab it and walk out of the classroom if you would like. You can use it during breaks. That does not matter to me. But you are going to put your phones in here for the duration of the class and any and all testings, which we had to do weekly, kind of weird international English program. And people were complaining. It's like, well, what if I need to translate a word? And I said, well, there's this thing called a dictionary. You can buy one and have a dictionary with you. And just use the dictionary because it's a book, so you can use it to look up things. Well, it's not going to be as fast. Yeah, but it'll be better. There's there's science behind like looking at a screen and looking at a page. Where looking at the screen, your brain isn't going to process it the same way as looking at a page. And not everyone's different with that, but I mean, on a bell curve state, is more you'll memorize something from a page as opposed to memorizing something from a light bulb, effectively.
Right.
So I mean, like, that's where I see that, where it's like you have to listen here and feel what you're doing first, as opposed to just viewing it. And that is not to take away from people who cannot actually be in a room with somebody. If you have to just have a video of something to actually learn it, that's all you've got. Literally, like, everyone was taken out from the style that you practice, and the only thing you have is videotapes. Hey, more power to you. What you're trying to break it down from. But I think you need someone else around. You need other experienced people, right? Like,
well, I think also, I mean, you need multiple sources of input. You going back to an IT reference. I mean, okay, you got a video. Can you actually touch? Can you actually see? Can you actually feel what that actually feels like? More than likely not. You almost need somebody else helping you out. And in one of my, I did learn a couple weapons katas from video because, one, they were really rare. I mean, they really were. And I was in that mode of like, yeah, I gotta learn.
right.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, I was thankful for it, but I'd say I'd work probably 2 hours a night going frame by frame for at least a month and a half. There was one kata that I did that for almost 5 months.
Right. How many people are going to do that?
And I think it just depends on how bad you want it.
Yeah.
How bad do you want it? And when I was doing that, I had somebody else on the side, hey, I'm seeing this, and I would tell them what I was doing, and they were really helpful, but they actually understood what was going on. They may not have understood the kata or anything, but they understood, okay, this is what's being taught, and this is where you should concentrate your focus, and here's where the weight is, and things like that. And that was probably invaluable, because I could do this, but then if I had somebody just getting me to where I could feel it from that, then and part of it was I definitely wanted to learn it. I really did. And what was funny is I learned it, but I take some of the techniques from it, but if you asked me to do it today, I probably couldn't. One of them, two of them I can, but the rest of them I couldn't. Let's see, there's what, three or four. There's three or four that I did that with. And two of them I can do it. But,
Right. And like we've definitely done stuff where it's like we worked on it and drilled it for weeks and months on end.
mm-hmm.
Honestly, if you asked me to do it now, I probably couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean like, and then that goes into what is the service and purpose of kata? Well, you have a lot of your body's internalizing motion, your body's internalizing muscle memory, your body's internalizing all this different stuff. That even if you can't necessarily get through step by step of a form, you can break down bits and pieces of what you remember of it to better serve your martial arts, better serve your techniques, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
And one of the things that I did was it probably right after my mom passed. I really needed to focus in on something, and my mom and I were really, really close. And I didn't learn anything really new. And what I did is I'm like, I need to get grounded. And that was in every aspect of my life. What's important, what's not, this, that, and the other thing. So I went back to my martial arts. I'm like, where's the beginning of my martial arts? He's like, not Shonan. And so I broke down how I did Naji Shonan. And I mean, I went through every little movement, like where technique was coming in from, where I put emphasis on different things and stuff like that. And I was like, I totally got how different influences created how I did something.
right,
And it was really interesting to really break, and I did that for not quite a year, but I did it right at about a year. And I mean, you look at today, how many people would really do that?
not many. I feel that's not to say that people who don't do that
Right.
are necessarily bad, but
No.
I think that takes a certain motivation to do any of that, right?
Right.
Because I mean, and it also goes into how things are presented. I was kind of BSing in my office, and it was like thinking about that, and it's like, if we were really going to go on this kind of trek of like kata 1 year or 1 kata 3 years,
Yeah.
how would you do that? How would you present that in a kind of a, I don't want to say modern context, but like, to contemporary context, right? And how, if we have those 15 katas on the page, and we say 3 years to black belt, well, what number needs to change?
Yeah. No, I think, you get into the conversation, and maybe this was with me or someone else, you get into quantity versus quality.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, go right ahead. Sorry, Skype kind of does that sometimes, where it's like, no, that person was saying, no, that person was talking, no, that person was talking.
No, I mean, you get into quality versus quantity. I'll tell you another real quick story. When I had my school open here in Kansas City, we had a kid come in, and he'd been training like 7-8 years with somebody, and he comes into my school, and I just asked him, just show me a stance that you've learned and stuff, and it was like, well, I know this and I know this and that. I mean, he rattled off like probably 45, 50 katas that he knew. But when I looked at him and I told his mom, I was like, he's got a great amount of knowledge, but he has no balance and he can't apply any of this.
Right.
And
So
that gets into quality versus quantity. And I wasn't picking on it. I really wasn't. I was really, part of me was dumbfounded because it's like, where's the quality in what you're learning? You can do it fast, but you're out of balance. I mean, you're going to hurt yourself, much less somebody else. You know?
yeah, and I mean, I I think that goes into kind of like what are the fundamentals that need to be taught when you first teach somebody, and kind of what does that go into? What kind of quality teaching can you give somebody? Do we understand what that needs to be? Because then ultimately it doesn't matter how much you remember or what you remember. If you have those fundamentals in place, you could probably take 10 videos of 10 katas of stuff you've never learned before and apply it all around,
Right.
and then get something out of all 10 of that, and then maybe forget all of them in the next year, but still retain that. And it sounds like the guy you were teaching kind of was like top heavy in terms of knowledge, but there was nothing on the bottom to kind of hold it together.
Right.
So
Yeah. And you know, and real quick, I mean, I think that's one of the other things we get into. We teach as technicians. Oh, we got to be great technical, this, that, and the other thing. Well, I think this is just my personal opinion, and opinions are just like what, and everybody's got one. So,
right.
my opinion is we're teaching technicians, and that's great and fantastic and all that stuff. But what about teaching engineers who know everything behind it? And I guess that's how I've always, because like whenever I hear that from we're teaching technicians. I'm teaching engineers. I want people to know everything behind this. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not doing my job as a teacher. And that's how I've always felt.
Right. That gets at the base of it all, because
Yeah.
you can create good martial artists from basics,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't need to have those 50 katas in place, or whatever. But if you're worried about maintaining something and kind of proliferating it, as it were, that's the right word. That it gets into that. But if you've got people at that strong base, then you can take them anywhere.
Right.
You can take them to a very complicated, like the Saikata we've been doing for years and years and years.
Right.
You could start someone with that,
Right.
and just have that be the thing they do, and
Right.
they could pick apart so much from that. Or you could have them start from any given direction, but if they have that fundamental base of balance and stances and stuff like that, then they can go anywhere. So.
Exactly. So, no, yeah.
All right, sir. I guess we can get to the part of the show where we're wrapping up on that discussion. So, what are you working on this week? What have you been working on recently in terms of martial arts and whatnot?
Well, I mean, as far as martial arts, I mean, it's kind of what I'm constantly doing is like, I'm just kind of picking up something that I hadn't worked on in a while. And it may be, it may be cheesy. It may be Nahanchi Shodan. It may be Nisei Shi. I just try to find what I'm going to be present with or natural minded with, work on that to where I get the most out of it, move on. Now, I have kind of been doing kind of one of the things that we did a long time ago when I showed you this training exercise where you put all the basic katas together into one huge kata.
Oh, right, yeah.
And so sometimes I'll be working on something and then it's like, well, wait a minute, all of a sudden I'm naturally minded into something else, and then boom, I'll move into that. Like a few days ago I was working on cheesies a little bit, and then I'm like, wait a minute, something was, and then I look at Tombo, I was like, okay, do this, and then I'll work with a Tambo Kata, and then I'll work with Tambo going and doing some of the stances with cheesies and doing that foot motion and that pattern with it, and it's something totally different and just kind of changing it up. It's not that I'm messing around with the katas, but it's like, what if I do this? What if I do that? So I'm constantly analyzing what it is that I'm doing and what it is that I can get out of what I do.
Taking a different mix with stuff.
Yeah, just looking at it from a different viewpoint,
Right on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the biggest lessons I took away from our work, where it's just like, we can have this whole curriculum of stuff, but if you can't break it down and go different ways with it, it's not going to really work for you.
Right.
So.
Exactly. So, and I mean, that's kind of a lot of what I've been doing. For some reason, probably the most stuff that I've been working on, probably the last 4 to 6 months. For some reason, I've gotten a lot into cheesy and pasai and tamari seizon, and I've just mixed a lot of that together just to see different viewpoints, maybe there's a technique here, maybe there's something like that, and I'm really kind of trying to develop, whenever I do teach, kind of a fundamental way to look at technique a little bit differently. Instead of, this is technique, this technique, this technique. I'm looking at it more from like a paragraph structure. It's like, okay, what are you going to open with? What's your body or your actual technique, and then how are you going to close it up?
Right.
And I'm trying to really break techniques down like that. So, but.
Right on. I mean, going somewhat in that direction, but what I'm more working on is like, I talked about this a little before, is like kind of shadow Joe boxing, as it were. So in like the Joe box, for those who don't really know, the Joe box is a box where we do a basic Joe kata, and somehow that just became the staple of kind of the martial art we do. Of that karate style. It's amazing that it's kind of like that bagua, our version of the bagua circle. If anyone can kind of parse where that comes from, and what I've been doing is just kind of doing like shadow boxing version of moving on that box, and just kind of letting my hands go and seeing what comes out. And just letting my feet go and maybe do a technique, do more kind of sparring type style stuff, do more kind of do a turn and then get on my knees and see where the technique would go. How can I be mobile from the ground on that box? So that's kind of what I've been working on. But
cool, very cool.
All right, sir. Well, thank you for jumping on this episode of the podcast. I hope we get to have you back sooner than later. I'm not really sure when we're going to record next, but it's been a pleasure having you on.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm very thankful that you invited me, and it's been a lot of fun. So very cool.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for being on. Everybody else, thank you for listening, and keep on training.